Right, so we are about to do a sort of talk shop, a little bit of a talk first, then a workshop at the end, on transferable skills to pay the bills. I am Markus Albrecht. You can find me on Twitter, although I never really go on there, I must admit, at Beardy Tester. And this is Kim.
Hello.
Kim Pro.
And I don't use Twitter very much either, but you can find me there if you want to.
So, we've already done the introductions. Oh, actually, Kim, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, so at the moment I am a consultant at Infinity Works with a basis in testing, but as you will see from my journey, I kind of consider myself quite a generalist. I've sort of dabbled in lots of different things. Yeah, so that's me at the moment.
And I am Markus Albrecht, for those of you who don't know me. I've kind of been a bit all over the place in my career, largely all testing. So we're going to come at things from sort of different angles, but hopefully it'll all sort of tie up at the end. So first of all, I'll hand it over to Kim and she's going to explain to you what transferable skills are.
So, as Markus mentioned, the core purpose of this talk shop is to talk about transferable skills and where you can gain them from and how they can be used in testing. So, to address this, we have to think about what are transferable skills. So, transferable skills can be defined as skills developed in one situation which can be transferred to another situation. These are often called generic, soft or key skills. So, this is the Wikipedia explanation of it, and hopefully over the course of this talk shop, we'll give you a little bit more of a demonstration on actual ones and where you can find them.
So, why should we give a shit? So, everyone has worked with a tester at some point that kind of just sits in a corner, they get the application or whatever under test and they just sit there and they test it. They don't talk to anybody, they just raise bugs, they're generally quite critical towards everybody and frankly they rub everybody up the wrong way. So, good transferable skills will actually help overcome that kind of behaviour because they're a conduit to quality. So basically they open up discussion with the team and you get a chance to explain to everybody how the software actually works and ultimately improves the team cohesion and also accelerates the delivery. So
now we've talked a little bit about what transferable skills are and why we need them. We're now going to give you those examples of our transferable skills that we've gained over the course of our career. And to do that, we're going to take you through our journeys. So I'm going to start by starting right from word go, from where I started in my career. So from this, you can see that originally I was a crazy mad scientist working in a lab. I did this for about a decade. I was basically, there we go. I was researching membrane transport proteins. I spent a lot of time shooting X-ray crystals, X-ray beams at crystals, elucidating protein structure. I did a PhD in this and I did a postdoc. And it seems like a world away from testing on the surface, but actually there's a huge amount of skill crossover. So during the time when you're doing research in research lab, you have a goal in mind, a research project. And to achieve that goal, you need to have lots of transferable skills. So the first one is that you're completely autonomous. It's your project, you do whatever you need to get done to achieve your goals. So to be autonomous, you also need to then be able to plan it out. So you have a long-term plan, a short-term plan. So this gives you really good organisational skills. At the end of the day, if your project fails, it's down to you and nobody else. So you need to be able to plan that ahead and make sure that you're always working towards your goals. In short term, this is probably where I first came across agile working, albeit in a non-traditional sense or a non-formal sense, because in essence I had a backlog of work or a long-term plan, a roadmap, where I needed to achieve my research goals to appease my stakeholders, which happened to be my grant people, the people who gave me money to do my research. And then I also had short-term sort of sprint backlogs of experiments that would help me to achieve that long-term goal. In addition to the actual organisation project management side of research, I also did, was obviously a huge amount of technical skills involved in achieving scientific goals and analysing results. And that helped me really improve my critical thinking and problem solving skills. But also as an academic, you do a lot of teaching. So as teaching, you become quite a fay at doing lots of coaching, showing people how to do things technically, but then also helping them with their actual goals and helping to achieve that through using your experience to help them achieve theirs. So in there I managed to enhance my coaching and teaching skills. In addition, as going back, I did quite a lot of prioritisation, because often when you're doing experiments, things go wrong, things never go as they should go, and you always have to replan and reprioritise all of the time. So as you can see, there's actually a huge amount of similarity between conducting a scientific research project and actually delivering software. So after about a decade of working in the lab, I then decided that actually I wanted to move out of academia. And here, I kept with the science, but I actually moved to a more commercial aspect. So I actually went into consultative scientific sales, which enabled me to use all the skills I'd learned in my science lab career. So all the technical expertise, I was basically selling equipment that was really useful for protein purification. So I was an expert in that. So I was going around and showing people how to do that. So hence that was more coaching and teaching. This is actually the wrong slide. So there was lots of coaching and teaching and basically helping people to achieve their goals. So there's a huge amount of observation, had to observe what people were doing, understand the problems that they were having, and then give them suggestions on how to overcome those problems. Also, because it was a business thing, I had to do lots of negotiation, facilitation. I had to be proactive because I had to be generating the business for Northern England. And again, I was working autonomously, but I was also based in a team, but it was a field-based team. So I gained lots of team building skills because we all needed to work together, but we were all spread across the entire country. So we had to communicate really well. So hence lots of honing of communication skills there as well. After a few years in sales, I then moved into testing. So here, I'd always been surrounded by IT because my husband was a software developer, so software development is always in our household, but I'd not actually done anything formally myself. But I saw that there was a huge amount of crossover. So I decided at this point, actually that sounds like a really cool job and I don't want to be driving around Northern England anymore, so I'm going to take the plunge and go for a testing role. This was quite interesting for me because it was basically a career change, so I had to basically learn lots of new skills, technical things. I need to basically go back to being able to ask for help. So here I learned a lot about asking for help, asking lots of questions, experimenting with new technologies, observing what the developers do, understanding users. So here I actually started doing some product owning things, but using the relationship management skills that I'd gained from my previous role working with front-end users to actually understand what users needed and why. And then after a few years of working as a tester, I then decided to try out working as a PO full-time. And again, there's a huge amount of overlap, but it pulls together a lot of the skills I've gained previously. So we can see here, there's the coaching, team building, organisation, lots of empathy. You really need to be very empathic. Everybody comes from a different angle, so you just need to listen and hear where they're coming from and help them achieve their goals without being judgmental. It's all about understanding people and what drives their behaviours. But I also gained a lot of leadership skills from my time as a PO. So it's been a servant leader, so basically enabling teams and stakeholders to gain the information that they need to deliver good quality software. And the product owner has a really key role in that. So this really helped to improve my leadership skills and gave me a new understanding and foresight into teams and how they operate. And since then, I've worked in a number of different roles in testing and different projects, basically about testing and product owning. Quite a generalist, as you can see. I've done lots of different things, but I've gained a huge amount of different skills over time. Why? So now I'm working at Infinity Works as a consultant, where in essence I get to pull together all of these skills that I've gained and help our clients to basically achieve the software goals that they've got. But again, being a consultant, it brings on its own new challenges. So even though I'm able to use my existing skills, I'm also able to grow more skills. So as being a consultant, being really adaptive is a really key skill, because the nature of your client work and the nature of the technology is shifting all the time. So you always need to be moving with that. And also have a resilience and courage, because sometimes things aren't going the way that you would perhaps do it, but sometimes you just have to stick with it and help guide people. And that could take a bit of resilience and courage to come in there. So yeah, so basically that's a really quick overview of my journey, but you can hopefully see I've gained a huge amount of different transferable skills and how I've then been able to apply it to different situations.
So, on to me. For those who don't know you, I spent a good portion of my life in New Zealand, hence the slide, and that's where I basically started life as a tester. So I started out for a bank which no longer exists anymore, thanks to the joys of the financial crisis. And I learned the basics of testing while I was there. I was very lucky. I had a couple of contract testers that worked there who sort of took me under their wing and kind of taught me the sort of basics of what was testing back in 2005, which is very different from modern testing. But unfortunately, my focus was a bit wrong back in then. It was far more focused on finding bugs and proving quality rather than actually just gathering information and disseminating that to stakeholders so they can make informed decisions. Luckily, I've fixed that since then. One thing I really did struggle with was I really struggled to interact with developers, especially the surly kind. You've all met them. You know, I came into this not knowing anything about code whatsoever. It was a very scary domain for me. I didn't understand it. So unfortunately, I very much took the kind of attitude of, oh, well, this is hard and scary, and these people seem to understand how it works, so therefore they must be right, which is a little bit dangerous when you're a tester. Basically, I really lacked the confidence to fight my corner. Luckily, as I continued in that role for about 18 months, that improved, and I got a little bit more confident at basically telling them that they probably were wrong. So then I moved on to a government department, and while I was there, I did a variety of testing roles, kind of working my way up to what was test management back in those days. But while I was there, I interacted with a very large sort of portion of the business, so I got I guess more of an introduction to the various different disciplines. And the more I interacted with them, the more I picked up sort of skills that they had, which was very useful. So I picked up sort of, you know, requirements gathering and then also estimation skills. This is the first sort of time I actually kind of encountered what I call herding cats. It's a fairly common term. It's not really a skill as such on its own. It's more kind of a collection of skills. I'll cover that a little bit more in one of my later slides. One of the other things that I also started to kind of learn while I was there was the sort of concept of autonomy. Obviously, aside from the kind of benefits you get from being autonomous, it helps build trust with the people that you work with if they're able to give you something and you're able to get on with it, and obviously only kind of ask questions that are pertinent and all that sort of stuff at the time, which is very useful. And again, I'll go into that a little bit later. I then moved to Yorkshire, the wonderful land that this is. And I was very lucky to get a test lead job there. So while I was there, I guess I built on a lot of the skills I'd already previously learnt. But one thing so the first thing I guess that I drew from that, and this is only kind of upon reflection, is that obviously again I was interacting with lots of people across the business and people within sort of different roles and that kind of thing. And one thing I noticed is that I started tailoring the information that I was giving to people and the language that I used depending on the audience. That's a very powerful skill to gain, for the simple reason that it allows basically everyone to understand the application under test a lot better, because you're speaking to them, I don't want to say on their level because it sounds condescending, but you know what I mean, like using language that they use. Another skill that I kind of honed a lot while I was there was becoming a conduit of information. So I would always have people stop by my desk and they'd ask me about things. And if I didn't know the answer to the question, it got to the point where if I didn't know, somebody probably did. I knew someone who did. So it meant that more people kept coming to see me, more people kept stopping and having a chat. Now, obviously that can be slightly hard from the point of view that it feels like you're never going to get your work done because you've got people stopping by your desk all the time. But you pick up so much information from all these people coming to talk to you that then will become useful to you and your team later. You might not necessarily realize at the time, but it does. So that again, if you're in a position to kind of pick that skill up, you should. I also picked up a sort of decision-making and prioritization skills as well. They were kind of leveraged more, I guess, at kind of at that stage, a sort of project level. But I've also used those lots going forward, just in terms of like test strategies and plans and things. They all kind of factor in quite heavily to that. After that, I became a gun for hire and moved back to being a more hands-on tester. I was focused more when I sort of went into this role on more technical skills, as I moved into a role that used a lot of APIs and was more website based than my previous roles. So it just meant that I had to learn how to test APIs, which is obviously, when you consider yourself somewhat technical, that's quite a challenge to overcome. The major thing that I picked up from that, aside from, of course, the actual technical skills that came along with it, is it gave me, again, I guess a set of language, a common language to use with the developers. So it meant that it was easier for me to communicate with them, which meant it felt a lot more inclusive. You could sort of become more part of the team, and it didn't feel so much like an us and them type situation. Another thing that I started to learn were observation skills. I mean, obviously these are things that testers need, and that I'd obviously developed these prior to this stage, but I was started to focus more my observation on things that weren't necessarily just in the code base. So when you come in as a contractor or a consultant, you obviously, there's a lot of team dynamics, you've got established teams that you're working with, that kind of thing. So you want to kind of, I guess, take a step back and make some sort of internal observations about who knows what, why people are reacting to certain things in the way that they are, I guess power dynamics, that kind of thing. Before you start making any sort of suggestions or sort of verbal observations or giving your opinions. It just helps put everybody at ease. I think we've all worked in an organisation whereby new starters come in. Generally, they sort of tend to be managery types. No offence to managery types in here, and they come in waiting in there with their size 10s. And they're like, well, in my old organisation, we used to do blah, and it went like this, and it just gets everyone's back up. So at least if you understand why people are doing what they're doing, at least try to, it makes it easier to, I guess, become part of the team quickly. The last kind of major thing that I guess I learned from that particular role is the understanding of focus. So there are times when you are in a position where you can test everything to the nth degree. As testers, we know that you give us something, and we could, if we wanted to, test it till the end of time. But there are times where that's not what the stakeholders actually want. They need something out the door quickly. They need you to just test to make sure, just to basically check to make sure it works. And if that's what they want, then that's okay. So that was, I guess, kind of a learning curve there for me, learning that it's like, well, I haven't finished. Well, testing is finished when they say it's finished. You've just got to make sure that you've got, as much as you can, well, not as much as you can do done, but make it okay for them, I guess. I then went back permy. I was luckily in a position where I could start to learn test automation. And so I then started writing and debugging code. It was in Java. First of all, it was looking at sort of UI tests and then back-end stuff, also looking at deploying code. This was great because obviously, again, aside from the technical benefits that came along with this, I developed a new appreciation for the work that developers do. If you don't write code, it's really easy to be critical. You don't really necessarily understand how easy it is to introduce bugs. So that was great because I guess, it made me understand them a bit better. And now I have returned once again to the life as a mercenary. And I've been a lot more involved with monitoring, logging, and containerization and the deployment of those containers. And again, aside from the obvious technical benefits, this has been quite useful because it's essentially allowed me to define problems a lot better when I'm speaking to developers. It's like, this is the problem I have. I know the language that they use. I'm able to prove things a lot better because I'm able to go to, I guess, a greater level of detail into how things are working than I was previously. So that is essentially my journey.
So, now that both Markus and I have given you our journeys, hopefully you can see that although we come from very different backgrounds, there's actually a huge amount of overlap, be it observational skills to be able to observe developers, observe users, help us build better products. But lots of different crossover of all the different types of skills that you gain and where you gain them from. So without further ado, it's now exercise time.
So, we've shown you ours, now it's time for you to show us yours. So we're going to divide into pairs or threes, depending on what you prefer. And each group member will fulfill one of the following roles. So we've got a describer. So this person will walk through their career and life. Doesn't have to be necessarily career-based. You get transferable skills from everywhere. And draw out some of the skills that you've acquired over time that you can essentially translate to testing. The other role is the facilitator. You'll scribe what the describer has said, and then the projector will go off. And it's not going to come back on. That's awesome. Fabulous. Right, well, we're without a projector. Let's just try this. No, we've knackered it. Right. Okay, so the facilitator, oh, resident tech person. Right, so the facilitator is going to describe what the describer. Yay!
I didn't even do anything.
Yeah. Your presence is all that's required, Richie. Yeah. So basically, yeah, you're just going to write down what they've said and discuss the experiences with them and I guess try and tease out some stuff. If there is a third person in your group, they will be the adjudicator. This role is probably more, I guess, tailored to people who don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about their own experience, which is perfectly fine. So basically, your role there is to keep the facilitator and the describer on track. So just keep them focused on the task at hand. We've said here no more than 10 minutes, and the reason that we want no more than 10 minutes is because we'd like you to swap, basically. So, you know, yeah. Right, after that, we'll then do a debrief, which will be about another 20 minutes. So 20 minutes doing the thing, 20 minutes doing a debrief. But there is one thing I'd like to stress here. Is this going to work? Please don't do this.
But we have our ways. One trick is to tell them stories that don't go anywhere. Like the time I caught the ferry over to Shelbyville, I needed a new heel for my shoe. So I decided to go to Morganville, which is what they call Shelbyville in those days. So I tied an onion to my belt, which was the style at the time. Now, to take the ferry cost a nickel. And in those days, nickels had pictures of bumblebees on them. Give me 5 bees for a quarter, he'd say. Now, where were we? Oh, yeah. The important thing was that I had an onion on my belt, which was a style at the time. They didn't have white onions because of the war. The only thing they could get was those big yellow ones.
Right, yeah. So if you could avoid doing that during the debrief, that'd be grand. So we've got, I think we've actually got more groups than we've got paper, unfortunately, which is a bit unfortunate. So what we're going to do is everyone can grab one of them. If you don't have one of them, take your sticky labels once you've had them scribed and stick them to yourself. And then we're going to go through them. So we can use in here, we can use outside, we can also use the bar area. So pair up, trio up, do your thing, and we'll see you back here.
Should we do some on paper?
Yeah.